The country club lawn stretched out like an emerald carpet under the July sun, dotted with white tents and approximately 200 family members celebrating the Patterson family annual reunion. My brother Derek stood at the center of the largest tent, holding court like he always did, his Rolex catching the light every time he gestured with his champagne glass. I arrived in my 10-year-old Subaru Outback, parking it between Derek's Mercedes-AMG and my cousin Victoria's Range Rover. The valet gave my car a puzzled look before taking the keys. "Sophie," my Aunt Linda called out, waving me over with perfectly manicured nails. "Darling, you made it. We were worried you'd have to work." "School's out for summer," I said, accepting her air kisses that didn't quite reach my cheeks. "Still teaching then," she said, her smile tight. "Well, someone has to educate the masses." I'd been teaching high school English for 7 years. My aunt had been living off the family trust for 32. Derek spotted me and immediately raised his voice so everyone could hear. Well, look who finally showed up. Did the Subaru make it all the way from your side of town?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. About 40 people turned to look at me. "The car runs fine," I said quietly, accepting a glass of water from a passing server. My cousin Brandon, Derek's longtime enabler, chimed in. "Dude, I thought trust fund kids were supposed to be rich. What happened to you?" "I live within my means," I said. Derek walked over, his expensive shoes crunching on the gravel path. "Within your means. Sophie, Grandpa left all of us set for life. The trust fund is supposed to make life easy. Instead, you're out here working like a regular person." "Teaching is rewarding work," I said. "It's also poor people work," Victoria added, examining her fresh manicure. "No offense, but you could be doing literally anything else. You have a trust fund." My Uncle Richard joined the growing circle around me. Sophie's always been the odd one out. While the rest of us understood that the Patterson name means something, she decided to slum it with public school teachers. "I teach at a public school," I confirmed. "The kids are wonderful." Derek laughed louder. "Can't even afford a decent car, some trust fund kid. What are you driving at 2015? 2014? 2016, I said. "Jesus Christ," Brandon said, shaking his head. "I change cars more often than that. You know, you can just buy a new one, right? The trust fund pays out quarterly." "I'm aware of the distribution schedule," I said. My grandmother Margaret approached, leaning on her cane but still formidable in her designer outfit. "Sophie, dear, your brother makes a valid point. You're 29 years old and living like you're struggling. It reflects poorly on the family." "I'm comfortable, grandmother," I said. "Comfortable is for people without options," she said. "You have options. The Patterson Trust was established specifically so none of our family would ever have to struggle or work ordinary jobs. Your grandfather would be disappointed." I took a sip of water and said nothing. Derek's wife Cassandra, dripping in jewelry that could fund a small school district, added her thoughts. "I think it's actually kind of sad. Like, Sophie clearly doesn't understand how to access her money properly. Maybe she needs a financial advisor." "I have financial advisors," I said quietly. "Well, they're doing a terrible job," Victoria laughed. "Look at you. Off-the-rack dress, drugstore sunglasses, and that tragic car. No offense, but you look like you work retail, not like a Patterson heir." The circle around me had grown to about 60 people now, all listening to my family dissect my life choices. I recognized the pattern. This happened every year at the reunion. I was the family curiosity, the trust fund failure, the cautionary tale parents told their children about squandering opportunities. Derek pulled out his phone to show the crowd something. "Check this out. This is my new yacht. 42-footer, custom interior, cost about $800,000. Got it approved through the Trust's luxury asset program." People cooed and congratulated him. "And this," he continued, swiping to another photo, "is the villa I'm building in Tuscany. 3 million, all trust funded. Should be done by next summer." Brandon high-fived him. "Living the dream, man." Derek turned to me. "See, Sophie? This is what you're supposed to do with a trust fund. Enjoy life. Build wealth. Make the Patterson name mean something." The Patterson name meant something to Grandpa because he built a business and employed thousands of people, I said. "Not because he bought yachts." Uncle Richard scoffed. "That's exactly the kind of naive thinking that's kept you poor, Sophie. Grandpa built the business so we wouldn't have to." He wanted us to enjoy the fruits of his labor. He told me he wanted the family to be productive and purposeful, I said. When did he tell you that? Grandmother Margaret asked sharply. We had many conversations before he died, I said. Derek laughed. Right, sure. You were his favorite. That's why you're driving a Subaru and teaching kids who'll never amount to anything. My students are wonderful people with bright futures, I said calmly. Cassandra Stage whispered to Victoria. She's so defensive. It's kind of sad. The lunch bell rang and people began moving toward the main tent where catered food waited on tables that cost more than most families spent on groceries in a year. I stayed back, letting the crowd flow past me. Derek grabbed my arm as he passed. Hey, no hard feelings about the roasting, okay? It's just family fun. We just worry about you living like you're broke when you're not. I know, I said. Do you though? He said, suddenly serious. Because from where I'm standing, you're wasting your life. You're 29, Sophie. Prime of your life. You should be traveling, buying property, building something. Instead, you're grading papers for $47,000 a year. 52,000, I corrected. Oh wow, 52. My bad. That changes everything, he said sarcastically. Sophie, I spend more than that on car maintenance. Wake up. Use your resources. He walked away before I could respond. I sat through lunch at the family table, positioned between distant cousins who talked around me about their recent purchases, their upcoming trips, their investment properties. The Patterson Family Trust supported approximately 47 beneficiaries, ranging from Grandmother Margaret down to my second cousins who were still in college. Everyone at this reunion lived well. Some lived extraordinarily well, and they all thought I was the failure. After lunch, during the family business portion of the reunion, Uncle Richard took the stage in the main tent. As the eldest of Grandpa's children, he'd assumed a leadership role in family matters. Welcome everyone to the 47th Annual Patterson Family Reunion, he began. We gather today to celebrate the legacy of Jonathan Patterson, who built Patterson Industries from nothing and established the trust that continues to support us all. Applause filled the tent. This year, I'm pleased to announce that the trust has grown to approximately $250 million in total assets, thanks to excellent management and strong market performance. More applause. I clapped politely. Our quarterly distributions continue as scheduled. Individual beneficiaries received anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000 last quarter, depending on their tier in the distribution schedule. Derek leaned over to Brandon. I got 180. Moving up in the world. The trust board wants to remind everyone that annual spending reviews are coming up, Uncle Richard continued. We'll be evaluating how beneficiaries are using their distributions to ensure alignment with Jonathan Patterson's vision of family prosperity and growth. Victoria whispered to Cassandra. Translation, they're checking if anyone's doing drugs or gambling it away. We're also pleased to announce several new trust-funded initiatives, Uncle Richard said. Derek Patterson has proposed a family investment fund where beneficiaries can pool resources for commercial real estate ventures. Brandon Patterson is launching a luxury lifestyle consulting business with trust backing. And Victoria Patterson's fashion line received approval for $2 million in startup funding. The crowd applauded each announcement. These were the family success stories, the ones who used the trust correctly. Now, Uncle Richard said, his tone shifting slightly, we want to address something the trust board has been discussing. We have one beneficiary who has consistently declined to utilize their full distribution allocation, who lives well below the standard expected of a Patterson heir, and whose lifestyle choices raise questions about their understanding of the trust's purpose. My stomach tightened. I knew where this was going. Sophie Patterson, Uncle Richard said, looking directly at me, receives the same Tier 2 distribution as several other beneficiaries, approximately $120,000 per quarter. Yet she lives in a rental apartment, drives a vehicle that's nearly a decade old, and works a job that pays less than half her quarterly distribution. Every eye in the tent turned to me. The trust board is concerned, he continued, that Sophie may not fully understand how to properly utilize her resources. We've discussed whether additional financial counseling might be beneficial, or whether her distribution tier should be reassessed if she's unable to make proper use of it. Grandmother Margaret nodded approvingly from her seat at the head table. Derek raised his hand. If I can add something, I've tried talking to Sophie about this. We all have. She seems almost opposed to living well, like she's proving some kind of point by pretending to be poor. I'm not pretending anything, I said quietly. Then what are you doing with nearly $500,000 a year? Uncle Richard asked. Because it's certainly not visible in your lifestyle. My finances are private, I said. Not when they involve the family trust, Grandmother Margaret said sharply. The trust board has a responsibility to ensure funds are used appropriately. If you're hoarding money or making poor decisions, that affects the entire family. Brandon stood up. Maybe she's just bad with money? Like doesn't understand investing or something. I understand investing, I said. Then prove it, Victoria challenged. Show us what you're doing with your distributions. Because from here it looks like absolutely nothing. The crowd murmured in agreement. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket but ignored it. Uncle Richard seemed to make a decision. Sophie, the trust board is formally requesting a full accounting of your distributions over the past 7 years. We need to understand where the money is going and ensure it's being used in accordance with trust guidelines. The trust guidelines don't dictate lifestyle choices, I said calmly. No, but they do require beneficiaries to uphold the Patterson family reputation and standards, Grandmother Margaret said. You're an embarrassment, dear. Brilliant in your own way, I'm sure, but an embarrassment nonetheless. My phone buzzed again. Then again. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. 3 messages from Harrison Chin, senior partner at Chin & Associates, the law firm that managed the Patterson Family Trust. The messages simply said, "Call me immediately." "Excuse me," I said, standing up. "I need to take this call." Derek called after me. Running away from the conversation? Typical. I walked out of the tent and into the relative quiet of the country club's garden area. I dialed Harrison's number. "Sophie," he answered immediately. "I've been trying to reach you. Where are you?" "At the family reunion." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong exactly, but we have a situation. Several of your family members have contacted our office demanding financial audits, questioning your competency, and asking about redistribution of your tier allocation." I just sat through Uncle Richard announcing that to the whole reunion, I said. Harrison was quiet for a moment. "Sophie, they don't know, do they?" "No. Don't you think 7 years is long enough to maintain this experiment?" "It was Grandpa's idea," I reminded him. "Jonathan has been gone for 8 years. You're not obligated to continue his social experiment." "I want to see how long it takes them to figure it out," I said. Harrison sighed. "They're demanding documentation. Financial records. They're threatening to take it to the full trust board." "Let them." "Sophie." "Harrison, they just spent an hour telling me I'm a trust fund failure who doesn't understand money." Derek showed off his $800,000 yacht. "Victoria's getting $2 million for a fashion line. They think I'm incompetent." "You're the opposite of incompetent," Harrison said. "You're the most financially sophisticated member of your family." "Then let's show them that," I said. "Schedule a full trust board meeting. Invite everyone who was just in that tent. Give them exactly what they asked for, a complete accounting." "When?" "Tomorrow. The reunion goes through the weekend. Everyone's already here." Harrison laughed quietly. "You're sure about this?" "Completely." "All right. I'll send out the meeting notice within the hour. Sophie, your grandfather would be very entertained by this." "That's what I'm counting on." I hung up and walked back toward the tent. The family business session had broken up and people were mingling on the lawn. Derek spotted me and walked over with Brandon and Cassandra. "Everything okay?" Derek asked with false concern. "You looked stressed on that call." "Just coordinating some scheduling," I said. "Scheduling for what?" "Your lesson plans." Brandon laughed. "A trust board meeting, actually." Derek's smile faltered slightly. "Why would you need to coordinate a trust board meeting?" "Uncle Richard asked for a full accounting of my finances," I said. "So I've arranged for one. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. in the club's conference center. Harrison Chin will be presenting a comprehensive review." Cassandra looked nervous. "That seems fast." "I don't have anything to hide," I said simply. Word spread quickly. By dinner, the entire reunion knew that tomorrow's trust board meeting would focus on the Sophie situation. People looked at me with a mixture of pity and curiosity, like I was about to be exposed for some financial scandal. Grandmother Margaret cornered me at the dessert table. Sophie, if you've been mismanaging your distributions, it's better to admit it now. The family can help you. We can arrange counseling, oversight, a financial guardian if necessary. That won't be necessary, I said. Pride goes before a fall, dear. If you've made mistakes, own them. I will, I said. Tomorrow. That evening, I returned to my hotel room, a modest booking at a Holiday Inn rather than staying at the five-star resort where most of the family lodged. I ordered room service, something I rarely did, and reviewed the documents Harrison had sent over. My phone rang around 9 p.m. It was Derek. Sophie, listen, he said, his voice gentler than usual. I know we've given you a hard time, but I don't actually want to see you humiliated tomorrow. If you've screwed something up financially, maybe we can handle this privately. That's kind of you, I said. But I prefer transparency. There are going to be 40+ family members in that meeting. Plus lawyers and trust administrators. If you've done something stupid with your money, it's going to be public knowledge. I understand. Do you though? Because once this gets out, you can't take it back. The family will know. The lawyers will know. Everyone will know you couldn't handle your inheritance. Derek, why do you care so much? He was quiet for a moment. Because you're my sister. And even though you're weird about money and make bizarre life choices, I don't want to watch you get destroyed in a board meeting. I appreciate that, I said genuinely. But I'll be fine. Sophie. Trust me, I said. Tomorrow will be enlightening for everyone. I hung up and tried to sleep, though adrenaline made it difficult. For 7 years I'd maintained this carefully constructed image. The trust fund failure, the family disappointment, the one who didn't understand how to be wealthy. I'd driven old cars, lived in modest apartments, dressed simply and worked a middle-class job. And the entire time I'd been managing the very trust fund they all depended on. The conference center at the country club was designed for corporate events and large meetings. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the golf course. A massive table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by leather chairs. By 9:45 the room was packed. All 47 trust beneficiaries had shown up, along with their spouses and adult children. People lined the walls when the chairs ran out. Harrison Chin arrived at 9:50 with 2 associates, each carrying boxes of documents. Behind them came Margaret Foster, the trust senior accountant, and David Kim, the investment manager. I arrived last at 9:58, still dressed simply in slacks and a blouse from Target. The crowd parted to let me through to a seat near the front. Derek leaned over. Last chance to back out. I'm good, I said. At exactly 10 a.m. Harrison stood up and moved to the head of the table. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this emergency trust board meeting. We're here at the request of several family members to conduct a comprehensive financial review of Sophie Patterson's trust distributions and spending patterns. Uncle Richard nodded approvingly. It's about time. Before we begin, Harrison continued, I need to provide some context about the Patterson family trust structure. This is information that some of you may not be fully aware of. He pulled up a presentation on the large screen at the front of the room. The Patterson Family Trust was established in 2015 by Jonathan Patterson, 2 years before his death. The trust contains approximately $250 million in assets, as was mentioned yesterday. People nodded. This was all familiar information. The trust is structured with several tiers of beneficiaries, Harrison continued. Tier 1 beneficiaries receive up to $250,000 quarterly. Tier 2 beneficiaries receive up to $150,000 quarterly. Tier 3 beneficiaries receive up to $75,000 quarterly. We know all this, Victoria said impatiently. Can we get to Sophie's financial mess? We will, Harrison said. But first I need to explain something crucial about how the trust operates. While you all receive distributions, the trust itself is controlled by a single trustee who has complete authority over all trust assets, investment decisions and distribution approvals. The room went very quiet. That trustee, Harrison said, is Sophie Patterson. For approximately 5 seconds, nobody moved or spoke. Then Derek laughed nervously. That's not possible. Sophie's a teacher. Sophie is a teacher, Harrison confirmed. She's also the sole trustee of the Patterson Family Trust and has been since its inception in 2015. Grandmother Margaret gripped her cane. That's absurd. Sophie was 22 years old when the trust was established. 21 actually, Margaret Foster, the accountant, said. She was finishing her MBA at Wharton with a specialization in fiduciary management when Jonathan approached her about the position. MBA. Brandon said. Sophie has an MBA? From Wharton, Harrison repeated. Graduated top of her class. She also has a bachelor's in education which she uses for her teaching career. Victoria stood up. This is insane. We've been getting distributions for 7 years. Someone would have told us. Jonathan specifically requested that Sophie's role remain confidential, Harrison said. He wanted to observe how the family would function without knowing who held actual control. He viewed it as a long-term study of character and values. David Kim, the investment manager, stepped forward. I work directly with Sophie on all investment strategies for the trust. She reviews every major decision, approves all distributions, and has grown the trust from approximately $140 million to its current value through careful asset management. The number hit the room like a physical force. She's grown it by $110 million? Uncle Richard said weakly. Through a combination of strategic investments, real estate acquisitions and market timing, David confirmed. Sophie is exceptionally skilled at financial management. Cassandra looked like she might faint. The yacht Derek bought. Sophie approved that. Every purchase over $25,000 requires trustee approval, Harrison said. Sophie has approved hundreds of such requests over the past 7 years. Derek turned to me, his face pale. You've been signing off on everything? I met his eyes. Everything. The villa in Tuscany? Approved it in March. Victoria's fashion line funding? Approved it last month. Brandon stood up abruptly. You've been letting us mock you while you controlled all our money? I don't control your money, I said calmly. I control the trust that provides your distributions. There's a difference. Grandmother Margaret's voice shook. Jonathan did this deliberately. He wanted us to, what? To humiliate ourselves. He wanted to see how you treat someone you thought had no power, I said. How you treat family when you believed you had all the advantages. Harrison pulled up another slide. Let's review the specific distributions over the past 7 years. Derek Patterson has received approximately $4.9 million in total distributions, plus approval for the yacht purchase and villa construction. Derek sank into his chair. Brandon Patterson has received approximately $3.8 million, plus funding for 3 failed business ventures. Brandon put his head in his hands. Victoria Patterson has received approximately $4.2 million, plus the recent fashion line funding. Victoria's face was red. Harrison went through each beneficiary systematically. Uncle Richard had received over $6 million. Cassandra's jewelry collection was worth approximately $900,000, all trust funded. The family's collective spending over 7 years totaled approximately $89 million. And what has Sophie received? Grandmother Margaret asked quietly. Margaret Foster pulled up a different spreadsheet. Sophie's distributions tell an interesting story. She's received her full Tier 2 allocation every quarter, approximately $120,000. However, she's never spent more than $15,000 per quarter on personal expenses. What happened to the rest? Uncle Richard asked. She's been reinvesting it, David Kim said. Sophie has built a separate investment portfolio, managed independently from the family trust, that's currently worth approximately $7.3 million. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Additionally, Margaret Foster continued, Sophie has donated approximately $2.1 million to educational charities, scholarship funds, and her school district over the past 7 years. She's also established a private foundation that provides grants to public school teachers pursuing advanced degrees. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. You've been donating millions while we called you a failure? I've been using my distributions the way Grandpa hoped someone would, I said. Productively. Purposefully. Not just for personal luxury. Harrison advanced to the next slide. Which brings us to the purpose of today's meeting. Several family members have expressed concern about Sophie's competency and requested a financial review. Sophie has agreed to this review, but she's also requested we conduct a comprehensive evaluation of all beneficiary spending patterns. Uncle Richard's eyes widened. What? As trustee, Sophie has the authority to modify distributions based on beneficiary behavior, financial responsibility, and alignment with trust values, Harrison explained. She's never exercised this authority before. Today she's choosing to. I stood up and the room fell silent. Grandpa left me in charge because he knew I understood something the rest of you forgot, I said. Money isn't the goal. It's a tool. He built Patterson Industries by working 80-hour weeks and never forgetting where he came from. He created this trust to take care of family, yes, but also to see if any of us would remember his values. Sophie, Grandmother Margaret started. Yesterday, Derek called me a trust fund failure in front of 200 people. He spent nearly $5 million in 7 years and has no assets to show for it except a depreciating yacht and a villa that's over budget. Brandon has burned through $3.8 million on businesses that don't exist anymore. Victoria just received $2 million for a fashion line she hasn't even designed yet. I pulled out my own document. I'm implementing new distribution guidelines effective immediately. Tier 1 beneficiaries will have their quarterly distributions reduced by 40%. Tier 2 beneficiaries will be reduced by 30%. These reductions will remain in effect for a minimum of 2 years. You can't do this, Uncle Richard said desperately. Actually, as trustee, I can do exactly this, Harrison confirmed. It's within Sophie's explicit authority. The saved funds, I continued, will be redirected to the Patterson Family Education Initiative, which will provide college scholarships for low-income students. Additionally, I'm implementing a new approval threshold. Any purchase over $10,000 now requires detailed justification and demonstrated financial responsibility. Cassandra was crying. You're punishing us for not knowing you were in charge? I'm adjusting distributions to reflect Grandpa's actual values instead of enabling unchecked spending, I said. Derek, your quarterly distribution drops from $180,000 to $108,000. You'll need to scale back your lifestyle accordingly. That's still more than most people make in a year, Brandon said quietly. Exactly, I said. It's more than generous. It just requires you to make actual choices instead of buying whatever you want whenever you want it. Victoria stood up angrily. This is revenge. You're taking revenge because we made fun of your car. If this were revenge, I'd cut you off entirely, I said. This is accountability. Something Grandpa valued highly. David Kim added, it's worth noting that even with the reduced distributions, the trust will continue to grow. Sophie's management has been exceptional. You're all still wealthy. You're just not as wealthy as you were yesterday. Grandmother Margaret looked older, suddenly smaller. Did Jonathan hate us? No, I said softly. He loved you. That's why he created the trust. But he was disappointed in how easily the family forgot his values once money became easy. You let us humiliate you for 7 years, Derek said. You could have told us at any time. I could have, I agreed. But would you have learned anything? Would you have examined your priorities or your behavior? Or would you have just treated me differently because you knew I had power? The room was silent. Grandpa gave me a gift, I said. He let me see who my family really was when they thought they could treat me however they wanted without consequences. I've spent 7 years watching you all reveal your characters. Some of what I saw was disappointing. Some of it was heartbreaking. And some of it? Uncle Richard asked. Some of you have shown genuine kindness when you thought it didn't benefit you at all, I said. Aunt Linda always asks about my students. Cousin Jennifer volunteers at my school twice a month. Brandon's son writes me letters about the books I recommend. Those things matter more than any of you realize. Harrison cleared his throat. The new distribution guidelines will be implemented at the next quarterly distribution. You'll all receive detailed documentation of the changes. Sophie has also requested that we schedule annual financial responsibility reviews for all beneficiaries. This means our spending will be monitored? Victoria asked. It means the trust will finally operate the way it was intended to, Margaret Foster said. With oversight, accountability, and purpose. People began standing up, some angry, some shocked, some simply stunned. Derek approached me slowly. I don't know what to say, he admitted. You don't have to say anything right now, I said. I've been such an ass to you. For years. And you could have crushed me at any point. Yes. Why didn't you? Because you're my brother. And because I kept hoping you'd figure out on your own that the way you were living wasn't making you happy. Derek looked down. The yacht doesn't make me happy. Neither does the villa. I thought it would, but it doesn't. Things rarely do, I said. Cassandra joined us, mascara streaked down her face. Sophie, I'm so sorry. I've said terrible things about you. To you. I thought you were pathetic. I know. I'm the pathetic one, she said. I've spent years shopping and spending and trying to impress people who don't matter. While you were building something meaningful. Uncle Richard approached next, and then Victoria, and then others. One by one, family members who'd mocked me yesterday offered apologies today. Some were genuine. Some were clearly motivated by fear of further distribution cuts. I accepted them all with the same calm I'd maintained for 7 years. Grandmother Margaret was the last to approach. She leaned heavily on her cane, looking every bit of her 86 years. Your grandfather was a clever man, she said. Cleverer than I gave him credit for. He was wise, I said. He chose well when he chose you. I'm sorry I didn't see it. You see it now, I said. That's what matters. She touched my cheek gently, the first genuinely affectionate gesture she'd shown me in years. I've wasted a lot of money on things that don't matter. You have time to change that. At 86? You have time, I repeated. As the meeting broke up, Harrison pulled me aside. That was well executed. Your grandfather would be impressed. I hope so. What now? Now I go back to teaching, I said. The trust will continue operating under the new guidelines. People will adjust. Some will be angry for a while. But they'll all be better for it eventually. You're not worried about the anger? Grandpa warned me there would be anger when the truth came out. He said it was worth it if it prompted real change. David Kim joined us. Sophie, I have to ask. Why did you wait 7 years? Why not reveal your role earlier? Because Grandpa's letter to me said to wait until they demanded a financial review. He predicted they'd eventually question my competence, and he wanted that moment to be the reveal. He thought the irony would be instructive. Harrison laughed. Jonathan Patterson, teaching lessons from beyond the grave. He was good at that, I said. I left the conference center and walked out to the parking lot where my Subaru Outback waited between luxury cars that cost 10 times as much. Several family members watched me go, their expressions a mixture of confusion, respect, and lingering shock. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Can we have coffee sometime? Like actual coffee where I listen instead of talk. I replied, I'd like that. Another text from Brandon. I'm sorry. Really genuinely sorry. Can I volunteer at your school? I need to do something useful. Call me next week, I typed back. We always need volunteers. Victoria sent, I'm canceling the fashion line funding. It was a vanity project. Can we redirect that money to your education initiative? That would be wonderful, I responded. The messages continued as I drove away from the country club, back toward my modest apartment and my ordinary life that was, I'd discovered, far more satisfying than any yacht or villa could ever be. That evening I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and Grandpa's letter, which I'd kept in a safety deposit box for 7 years. I'd read it hundreds of times, but tonight I read it again. Dear Sophie, it began, if you're reading this, you've either revealed your role as trustee or you're contemplating doing so. Either way, you've likely witnessed what I feared. A family that forgot where it came from. I'm giving you an enormous responsibility and an unusual burden. Managing the trust is one thing. Watching your family treat you poorly because they don't know you hold the power, that's something else entirely. But I need you to see what they become when they think money comes easily and without accountability. The trust isn't really about money, Sophie. It never was. It's about character, about values, about remembering that wealth is a responsibility, not just a privilege. I'm trusting you to teach that lesson when the time is right. You'll know when the time comes. They'll question your competence, your worth, your understanding of money. And in that moment when they're most confident in their superiority, show them the truth. Some will be angry. Let them. Anger passes. Humility and wisdom, if they take root, last forever. I chose you because you're the only one who never wanted the money for its own sake. You wanted purpose, meaning, impact. You understood that money is just a tool and the question isn't how much you have but what you do with it. Take care of the family, Sophie. But don't let them destroy themselves with wealth. Sometimes the greatest kindness is limiting access to things that harm us. Love, Grandpa. I folded the letter carefully and looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably researching yacht resale values. Victoria was canceling fashion line meetings. Brandon was Googling how to volunteer at schools. The family was being forced, perhaps for the first time in years, to reconsider what actually mattered. It wouldn't be easy. Change never was. Some family members would resent the new restrictions. Others would push back against oversight. A few might even challenge my authority legally, though Harrison had assured me the trust documents were ironclad. But others, like Derek in his text, like Victoria redirecting her funding, like Brandon wanting to volunteer, would use this moment to become better versions of themselves. That was what Grandpa had hoped for. Not punishment but transformation. Not revenge but redemption. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Miss Patterson, this is Brad, Derek's son. My dad told me what happened today. I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing with the education initiative. I've been wasting time and money on stupid stuff. I'd like to do better. Can I help with the scholarship program? I smiled and typed back, absolutely. Let's talk next week about what that could look like. 3 generations of Pattersons, I thought. Grandpa had built the wealth. My generation had nearly wasted it. But maybe the next generation would understand what it was actually for. I finished my wine as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. My Subaru was parked in its usual spot below. My apartment was small but comfortable. My teacher's salary was enough for my needs. And my $7.3 million investment portfolio, built slowly and deliberately, was there not because I needed it, but because I'd managed my resources responsibly. Tomorrow I'd go back to school, back to teaching teenagers about literature and critical thinking and the importance of character. Some of my students would become wealthy. Most wouldn't. All of them would need to understand that success wasn't measured in quarterly distributions or luxury purchases. My family had learned that lesson the hard way today. They'd called me a trust fund failure while I managed their entire financial future. They'd mocked my modest car while driving vehicles I'd approved them to purchase. They'd questioned my competence while I grew their inheritance by over $100 million. The irony was, as Grandpa had predicted, instructive. And now came the harder part. Helping them understand that the real failure wasn't living modestly despite having wealth. It was having wealth and forgetting how to live meaningfully. That lesson would take more than one shocking trust board meeting. It would take years of consistent guidance, careful oversight, and patient teaching. Good thing I was a teacher. And good thing Grandpa had given me the authority to grade their financial responsibility just as rigorously as I graded my students' essays. Some of them would fail at first. But with time, support, and accountability, I believed most of them could improve. Because that's what education was about, whether in a classroom or a trust fund board meeting. Helping people become better versions of themselves. Even when they didn't know they needed the lesson. Especially then.